Welcome back. Program is still Good Morning Abuja. And yes, that feature we just watched on flood sets the tone for our conversation this morning as we aim to do some advocacy and bring to attention the impact of flooding in Nigeria. The year 2022 was a devastating year for Nigeria as over 4.4 million people were displaced by flood. This is contained in the report, the Nigerian flood report that was released by by the UNICEF. This brings to attention why we all must be proactive, especially as the rainy season has commenced, especially here at the city center or the city Abuja, as I like to say. This morning, our set is graced with the presence of two eminent academicians who have invested themselves into researching and bringing knowledge that would help in flood prevention and managing the after effects of flood. I am happy to say we have at the house this morning Professor Hassan Shaibu. Good morning, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome on the program. And of course, this is a familiar face here on the station. I'm talking about Dr. Ganiu Agbaje. Good morning, and thank you for coming, sir.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, the issues around flood is what we want to look at. We want to see what can be done. How can we stop this menace? What do we need to do? Is it a natural occurrence or is it a man induced occurrence? These and so many things are what we are looking at this morning. But I'd like to start with you, Professor Hassan. Let us look at the natural and human induced causes of flooding in today's Nigeria. What is your opinion on this?
Thank you very much. The natural induced form of flooding cannot be far-fetched. It's as a result of heavy rainfall precipitation, that is it, and the nature of the terrain and the soil of this. These are natural causes or factors of flooding in any given environment. But that of human being is as a result of human activities within the environment, like deforestation, you understand? And there are style of agriculture, the way we plant our crops within the environment, and our building aspect, that is developmental aspect of this thing. You know, when you are building, you also remove the vegetal cover and then pack the soil and concretization of the surfaces, because most development now are compacting the soil in a way that when there is a heavy rainfall from the natural aspect, it's a sort of an expressway for water to flow on the surface. And then there are more.
Yes.
Let's stop here.
Yes. Well, Dr. Agbaji, this issue of flooding is one that is really, really critical. And as we heard our prof tell us about the natural and the human aspects of what causes flood, it brings to mind the question I want to ask, which is that what is the most effective or what effective ways can we deploy, especially in managing these causes of flood as just explained by Professor Hassan?
Well, thank you very much. It has mentioned by you also on the prof. You find out that in most recent times there's been a lot of fatalities because of flood, and these are mainly due to extreme weather conditions, which is now called climate change, and then our socioeconomic aspects of human causes and others. Yeah, how do you face it? How do you prevent it
Yes.
in this maybe 21st century or in these recent years? The strategy is what is important. The strategy is changing. Before we call it flood control. So using the engineering method to construct big dams, to change the cause of the flood. But it not change to flood management. You take it that you cannot change the climate change is a major issue you cannot really work on. And urban development, everywhere is being, you have concrete everywhere, slides everywhere, so there's no way the water percolates or goes down into the soil. At the same time, all the wetlands have been taken over. We are covering up the sea, doing so many things. The wetlands actually are supposed to be catchment for floods. But we are building it up. The Greenland, we are building it up. The floodplains, we're encroaching on it. We want to be very close to the sea, and we sell the land at enormous costs. So, flood management then means you have to live with the flood. It's coming.
Okay.
You must have your building to be able to withstand flood. You must do some other things that will help you environmentally, clearing of the drains and all the rest. But now, in the current, some years back now, there's more effort with regard to flood resilience.
Okay.
So it's the strategy that matters now. You now know that the flood has come. You cannot hold down the weather, the climate change.
Yes.
At the same time, there's so many infrastructures that are going on. River Niger, for example, that can build dams anywhere. It comes down to our delta. Sitting of the river, there will be overflow from the banks. So what we need now is, okay, how do we now? This is something we have to live with. We then need to, one, have a situation in which when it comes, should be able to overcome it and then live better. Maybe within our building will be built better. Our storm drains will be much more better way of clearing it. I'll speak more on that later. And at the same time, once you recover, you'll be able to predict actually it's likely to come. When it comes, what do? We have to move people. We have people who have to stay. But in recent time, we have to say we have to live with it, or we have to prepare for it. Then have to make sure that when it comes to flood, for example, you need to go into what we call disaster risk reduction. You cannot eliminate it.
Disaster risk reduction. Yes. That is a very, very good one.
Actually, that is a framework that has been agreed by the whole world. They call it Sendai framework.
Okay.
And there's a target for it for 2030 for us to meet.
Okay.
And Nigeria is a signatory to that agreement.
Okay.
And that agreement has only one goal, is to reduce risk.
Okay. Very quickly, let me ask Doctor this question. Our villages and our urban centers, it looks like the effect of flood is more in our villages, in our urban centers. Do you agree, and why?
Yes, it has to be more in the urban centers because we have removed the natural protector of the environment, vegetation.
Okay.
And the rural areas still have this vegetal cover. So, and then the role of trees on our environment is to hold the soil together, to allow the rainfall to percolate into the ground, and then reduce the velocity of running water on the ground. Okay. So that it will not cause. Before, it is, the doctor has just mentioned it, in the recent times,
yes,
flood has become a menace. Everybody is hearing about flood. When we were growing, there was nothing like that. Just because everywhere, about 15 to 20 years ago, Abuja, so many parts of Abuja has dense vegetal cover.
That's true.
And that was why we were not experiencing flood. Because this is the role. The urban development, he rightly said, our planning must be changed of building development. We don't concretize everywhere. create a green. Presently, the slogan now is green infrastructure, and it is even called urban green infrastructure. Sometimes even your backyard and what have you turn into just little garden or agriculture for you to feed on something instead of you going to the market to buy some of these things.
Yes, we come to that very shortly. But right now, let us go on a short break. And when we come back, I'm sure there's interventions that Dr. Agbaji and his team are involved in that would shed more light as to how we can now deal with flooding when it comes. It's still Good Morning Abuja. Stay with us. The program continues shortly. Welcome back. We've been discussing flooding, its effects, and how we can overcome the challenges that comes with flooding. And so far, we've had insights from Professor Hassan on what flooding is, what causes it, and how we can at least play our part as not people who are contributing to the causes of flooding. However, we've also heard some very interesting views from Dr. Agbaji, who has told us some of the things that we can do, and there's still more. Let's come to technology now. I know you lead a very, very important set of people as far as Nigeria here is concerned to deal with the issues around finding a way to deal with flooding. And you were sharing your thoughts with us earlier on the fact that when the flooding comes, what do we do? How do we even use it for a better economic state for ourselves? Let's look at GMS now. There are some strategies in GMS and some roles that GMS plays. Not all countries have equal resources. How does GMS, in delivering its mandate, accommodate this?
Yeah, thank you very much. GMS is what we call the full meaning is global monitoring of the environment and security for Africa. Everybody will be hearing of GMS, but GMS actually came from Europe.
Okay.
GMS in Europe now is now called Copernicus.
Okay, Copernicus.
Now, that of Africa is still left as GMS in Africa. It was an agreement of the African Union at what we call Maputo Declaration in 2006 that brought about it, because GMS in Europe then was meant to be utilization of Earth observation data to support anything that has to deal with Earth observation, satellite data.
Okay.
Because that's the main thing now, mapping the world through the eyes of the satellite and using the product to now support human on Earth. The partnership brought about, which was requested by African Union, brought about GMS in Africa. And that partnership was a major flagship collaboration. And you find out that the European Union actually are the ones funding it.
Okay.
So that Africa can meet up with the current trend, utilizing Earth observation. Particularly, the aspect which I'm leading involve 5 countries.
Okay.
Nigeria, Ghana, Benin, Burkina Faso, and Cote d'Ivoire. And there are 7 institutions that were involved. So it allows us now to collaborate and talk together, French people talking to English people, and looking at what each other can do better, and try to see what we can do for the West African sub-region. What we're developing will also probably be used in other parts of the continent.
Oh, wonderful.
So, utilization of Earth observation data, what GMS is doing is that monitor and assess floods.
Okay.
And provide what we call services, products and services that can be adapted and be used by all. The first thing is do we have past history of floods? We found out that it is not well organized. You just hear a newspaper report, there was flood in Ogupa, there was flood in Kaduna River, but is it documented? So we developed what we call updatable flood event database. And it was in such a way that it is in the same format throughout the region.
Okay.
So we have, there's so many products, but I know you don't give me enough time to explain that. But how do we now use this product to predict? Prediction, when it comes to this, we have the maximum of 10 days or 2 weeks. When you predict that, in February, and you are saying that by so months, so much will happen. You need to move close to that time to be able to get clearly
accurate
data. So to address people, this is what you should do. This are the things to be done. But we have what we call event database. We develop an apps flood reporter that can be at the scene and click on it, and then be sent to a server, so that we have what we had in the past, which we can view. It will help us in our forecasting. We have in it flood, what we call it flood damage model. This can be used to assess and say, this place was like this before, this is how it is. If you want to provide some kind of palliative for them, these are the people affected, these are the insurance people can also use it, and others. I don't know, there's so many, but
yes, I know there's so much that is going on in GMS, and well, you can look it up yourself, you can research and find out what they're doing. But as the program is going on, we are not we don't have that much time, and there's so much I want to get from these two notable academicians this morning. Professor Hassan, flooding, especially when we take it with the effect of climate change. Already, the world is changing. So much damage has been done to our climate. And here we are talking about one of the ways that that nature shows its wrath, which is flooding. And to now see that we are even contributors to this flooding is another thing altogether. Let's put this vis-a-vis the economic aspects that flooding affects. What should we do?
Well, thank you very much. The impact of flooding on an economic area is very diverse. It's very complex because the livelihood of people are actually taken away as a result of flooding. You understand? Even from micro-economic schemes and what have you, to big agricultural farms, flooding, no matter the area it occurs, no matter how little, it takes something away that is too important for you to survive. And that aspect, for you to recover from the damage done by flood as an economic impact, it may take a longer time. And before you even recover from it, another episode has happened again, just as Dr. Abuja said. You know, the only way we can solve this little problem is for us to have little history of events of flooding in our environment. When you have that little history, just as you say, the forecast will tell you these are the vulnerable areas of flooding because that is what also contain vulnerability mapping, which he did not say.
Well, so let me allow me to do
it. But sorry,
he doesn't have time to do it.
Yes,
that vulnerability mapping help a lot for human being to be able to anticipate when the flood is coming, the area that will be more affected. And one, you need to save life. For you to be able to say you are engaged in economic activities, you must be alive, isn't it?
Yes.
You need to save life, you need to save property. There are some items that are movable. When the flood is forecasted, that flood is coming so period, you know, it will give you a range. It will not give you maybe the actual starting point, but that period, stay away from that area. Move the items that are movable. protect your. But then there is one aspect that we cannot take away: our farms. Mostly he knows when flooding is about to occur. Maybe it is towards the harvesting period. The crops that you labored for is about to be harvested, then flood come and wipe it away.
And carry everything away.
That will take away a chunk of aspect of economic of any nation.
That's true.
And then if you count the individuals that are involved, because most of these people are providing food on our tables.
That's true. That's true. Well, Dr. Agbaji, you see, when we talk about the issue of flooding and we try to address these issues, we must come back to technology.
Yeah.
The whole world over, technology is what they use. When we're talking about vulnerability areas and response time to flood warnings or interventions, one thing I personally have noticed is that, for example, where I live, I don't think if there's a disaster, if there's any established protocol to follow or what routes to take, that confusion alone, it can lead to loss of lives. But we're talking major breakthroughs now in flood prevention and management, particularly as it concerns the things that GMS has done. These initiatives, can you just share some insight with us? Although we are running out of time, I'm very sorry, but we would like to hear
I will
this.
try as much as possible. There's a lot I will have loved to talk about, but
Yes.
GMS has two things that will make it easy for any agency that is buying into it and picking it up. One, the data, especially the satellite data, the condition we are given in running the project must be free.
Okay.
Copernicus are giving us free data on any type of satellite data you want to run your prediction. The second one, you don't have to pay for software. The software used are open source, so you are not paying on that. So you're supposed to adapt. Then the other one is that flood is local. In this country, we have three agencies: NIMET, NISA, and the real the NEMA.
NEMA.
They have to work together as far as flood is concerned in this country. Well, they have their backup decree and whatever. Throughout the GMS, we make sure that they were involved.
Okay.
They have the opportunity also of taking the lead in the project, but some of us applied and we were able to get it. But they were involved in terms of making sure they know what is going on.
Okay.
We did capacity building. Their DGs were also involved. They participated and even go to conferences outside this country. So what is important in this 21st century is for them to use technology.
Okay.
To adapt it to what they have now.
Okay.
To change the way prediction is being chunked out in this country.
Okay.
When you have prediction, when it comes to weather issue, you cannot know it very well beyond maybe 3 weeks maximum, 10 weeks or 10 days to be able to say, okay, it's likely this is because, and in these days you have what we call Internet of Things, yes, IoT. You put sensors somewhere, you can be monitoring using all the models we develop and putting it in as you are now saying, oh, the water level has gone up, something has happened, then you'll be throwing it into the model and get better prediction. So what is most important is that these days, flood management should be a resilient one and one that you can sustain. If you build a big dam and you cannot manage it, it will cause more problems. There's need for dams because what is important is take the best from the flood. You can do it as a reservoir. You can turn it for power generation. You can use it for irrigation management. It is not all lost. But if you allow it to be doing the structure anyhow, then we are not managing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, Professor Hassan, Dr. Agbaje, I would like to thank you for coming on the show this morning. There's so much left to say. There's so much we would like to hear from you. Unfortunately, we media people, we do not have the luxury of time. Our time is very precious, and that is why we would just have to say thank you for coming. But subsequently, we'll deepen this conversation as we'll continue to invite you to the studio to be able to look at these things and see how we can all play our part in ensuring that the statistics we've had in the past as it regards destruction of our livelihoods occasioned by flood do not repeat itself. The program is Good Morning Abuja, and Dr. Professor, thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
We'll go on a very short break now. When we return, Good Morning Abuja continues.